Hello, everybody. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 5 of the CR Sports Podcast. And this is a day after the greatest game in NFL history, Bears-Panthers on Thursday night.
Yeah, that was a tough watch. Seemed like Al Michaels was also out of it, but you know the really just a fight for the number one pick. I can't even lie. I didn't watch this game. I don't know if anyone else did, but
I can't blame Al, Colin, just because he's such a legend. And it's
Like,
like I feel
no,
I feel
yeah.
bad like even placing blame on him because he's been my childhood growing up as a kid,
Yeah.
listening to Sunday Night Football. The game, can you blame him? The games are terrible.
No,
They're awful.
Also, I hate the Thursday night just the sound. The broadcast
yeah.
is horrible. Like
Halftime
the
show.
fans are just awful. Other than Ryan Fitzpatrick on the halftime show, it's just weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either. I think the NFL, they see an opportunity, especially during the midweek, to get some more fan viewership. But the Thursday night games, there's just a lot of guys are always banged up, and it feels like we never get these good matchups. Which honestly, I'd rather have an enticing matchup be on a Sunday than on a Thursday night. So
That's true.
it's bonus football, but the Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit duo, it's hard to tell if it's actually working out because it feels like whoever you place on this game, it's going to be hard to bring a lot of energy, but especially when it's two of the worst teams in the NFL. I guess the only thing really accomplished there was that the Bears are looking like they're going to have the number one pick, whether it's theirs or the Panthers.
Yeah, it was a win-win night for the Bears. They got the win and they move up in the draft. But week 10 of the NFL is pretty. There's a lot of putrid games. You just look at the matchups. The game in Germany is Colts Patriots at 9:30 a.m. and honestly, there's only a couple games that I look to that I think that are pretty interesting, which is Browns Ravens and then obviously 49ers Jaguars. This is I think it's a test for the Jaguars in a way, but it's also a test for the 49ers. You lost 3 straight games. You're coming off that bye. Can you bounce back after
With the
kind of
addition
just like going to sleep for the last 3
and with
weeks?
the addition of Chase Young,
But can Chase Young have produce and have some production? He hasn't been that good at Washington so far as in his career.
Correct.
Besides his rookie year, when people thought, okay, he's going to get better at this, he really hasn't. He doesn't have a lot of total sacks in his career, and I wonder if this new spot in San Francisco really gives him an opportunity to get more production.
I mean, I don't see how it couldn't. I mean, he's with Nick Bosa on the other side. Obviously, they're a super strong defensive unit. Their secondary is okay, but I mean that the front seven is one of the best in football. So I can't imagine that he won't make it better. I think they'll definitely improve. I don't necessarily think that will solve their issues of late though. Brock Purdy has not looked good.
5 interceptions in 3
Yeah,
games.
he's looked horrible. He looked bad against the Vikings. The Vikings defense is horrible. So that seems to be their issue.
Besides Daniil Hunter, he's been underappreciated this year.
Well,
He actually leads the league in sacks with 10. It's actually kind of a storyline that I think that should get more attention. He's a guy that doesn't get mentioned for Defensive Player of the Year conversations, but he's been there.
Yeah, Brock Purdy coming into the year, it felt like a lot of people were sort of putting the label on him as a system quarterback, and through those first 4 or 5 weeks, a lot of people were starting to think this guy's more than a system quarterback. He was one of the MVP candidates through 4 or 5 weeks, and now the last 3 weeks, people are questioning whether the 49ers should look a different direction in quarterback, whether it's Darnold or bringing in someone else. So this is a big week, not only for the 49ers, but for Brock Purdy to sort of cement himself as the guy moving forward. And they're tied with the Seahawks right now for the division lead, and the NFC playoff picture is starting to heat up. I know the Eagles are starting to run away with the 1 seed, but there's a lot of good teams in the NFC, and the 49ers, they're not even winning their own division right now, barely, because they have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think the 49ers have a chance, though, Garrett, to start playing good football again because the Eagles have a really tough schedule coming up for the next, 5 games. So teams in the NFC are looking at that with easy schedules. I know the Cowboys are, but if you look at that Cowboys game that the Niners played, they were on the top of the world. They beat them by more than 30 points. You thought, okay, they're 5-0. They've cemented themselves as the best team in the league. They're playing great. Brock Purdy, like you mentioned, he's better than a system quarterback. He's a guy that can lead them and be the reason that they win games, not just a product of the system. But the last 3 weeks, a lot has changed, and you've noticed that especially with the interceptions. He's been a guy for the most part of his career. I know he's only played and started in 13 games, but especially early in the season, late in the season last year before he got injured, he didn't make turnovers. He barely even had interceptions, and then these last 3 weeks, that's completely changed. So I don't really know what's going on with that. I wonder if he can change that. I wonder if they've worked on stuff that's different in the bye week because I think this is really big for San Francisco. And you're going up against a good Jacksonville Jaguars team that's 6-2 right now.
They're
So
won 5 in a row.
yeah, it's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I think the Kyle Shanahan offense is sort of put in place as well as just to not turn the ball over. And when Purdy's been turning the ball over and then when 49ers have been trailing, he's been a lot worse than when the 49ers have been able to get leads and play from ahead.
Yeah, he's a game manager. He's put in his position to not turn the ball over. And when you put a game manager in and he turns the ball over, bad things happen.
I'm going to actually take the Jaguars in this game. I don't like the way that the Niners have been playing. I know this is coming off a bye week, and they have a very good coach in Kyle Shanahan. That usually means that you can bounce back and come back better than you were before. But I really like what Doug Peterson's done in Jacksonville ever since he got there. And Trevor Lawrence just continues to get better, and I think Travis Etienne has been a huge piece for them on offense this year. Calvin Ridley hasn't gotten a ton of the production that you thought he was going to get early in the season, but they're very balanced on offense, and they find ways to win games. They have a good defense as well. Josh Allen's been a freak on defense for them. I think this is a home game for the Jaguars too. I think they're going to assert their dominance, and I think it's going to be another loss for the 49ers, and questions are going to continue to build up for them in the NFC West.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think the Jaguars are going to win this game. If you look at Trevor Lawrence's stats, they're actually like middle tier of the NFL. It feels like he's sort of been playing more as a game manager, and that's honestly all the Jaguars have needed him to do so far this year. I think to have success in the playoffs, he's going to need to step up his game a lot more, but Doug Peterson is a really good coach, and he's done a great job with his Jaguars team. And in an AFC South that's not the most loaded division in the league, the Jaguars are looking like they're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, and they've beat some good teams. My main takeaway from this Jaguars team is the running game with Travis Etienne. I mean, how could it not be? Just they blow teams out with the run game. They'll hand it to Travis Etienne 20 times.
And throw it to him 10 times.
Yeah, I mean he is their workhorse, and then you mix in a little Christian Kirk down the field, and this offense is now explosive. So I actually am going to take the 49ers. I think they're going to bounce back, kind of reset. I think Chase Young will have an effect on this game, but definitely I definitely think it'll be a close game, and I could go either way.
Another game that we think is going to be close. This is an AFC North matchup and rivalry between the Browns and the Ravens. This is in Baltimore, though. Browns 5-3, Ravens 7-2. Lamar Jackson is an MVP candidate, maybe the MVP frontrunner at this point of the season at Week 10. He's gotten back to his 2021 self. A lot of people have looked at, but his stats aren't unbelievable either. I think people are kind of losing sight when they see the Ravens' record and see how they've been playing against good teams. But nonetheless, the Ravens are 7-2. They're going against a really good Browns defense, and the question is, what can the Browns do offensively? Because we know what they can do defensively. I got the Ravens in this one. I think Baltimore is going to continue to build up their lead in the AFC North, but it's a really good division so far this year, all throughout, even with the Steelers at 5-3, when it feels like they barely have any wins.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, this Browns team kind of reminds me of the Lions. Kind of good on the ground. Very pretty solid defense. So I think I'm going to take the Ravens here. Just lack of offense from the Browns. Just scares me to keep up with this Ravens offense.
Yeah, I think Jared Goff's a little bit better than Deshaun Watson, but I do see a lot of the same characteristics as well. It's sort of a game that the Browns almost feel like they can't lose, being in such a tight race in the AFC North with 3 5-3 teams, and the Ravens manhandled the Browns the first time they played, winning 28-3 in Cleveland. I know Deshaun Watson was out that game, but still.
And he hasn't been good.
The Ravens have been dominant at home. You look at their last 2 home games. When the Lions came in, only one loss. They were like 5-1. The Ravens absolutely manhandled them. And then last week, look what the Ravens did to the Seahawks, a team that was 5-2, atop the NFC West at the time. So the Ravens' defense has been really good this season, and the Ravens at home, they're a different team. So look for the Ravens to be all over the Browns again.
Yeah, and the other team that we're going to go all around the AFC North, Texans go to the Bengals. I'm really interested in this game because C.J. Stroud has been by far the best player out of this draft class, and he was excellent last week with over 5 touchdown passes. He looked unbelievable. He played great. The Texans are 4-4 with not that good of a roster. I think if you're a Houston Texans fan, you have to be very pleased, and you got to be happy and excited for the future with this franchise.
I'd just like to say, if you go back to our preseason episode, I said that the Texans would be a sneaky good team, kind of like the Giants last year. They play with a lot of heart. They're the good coaching staff, good defense, and when C.J. Stroud is on, this team is really good.
But it's different in the Giants because it's like the quarterback is kind of carrying. Well, Daniel Jones wasn't like winning games for the Giants and throwing 5 touchdown passes.
Correct.
It's been like C.J. Stroud looks like a superstar.
He does look like a superstar, but I think it's a little inflated with last week. Like, yeah, he threw for 470 yards, but I think it's a little inflated. He's still a rookie.
Right. That's why it's
There's
impressive.
there's still a lot that's unknown though. You don't know this Bengals defense has been playing really really well. This secondary has looked really good. You saw him against the Bills last week, picking off Josh Allen, forcing fumbles. So I think the Bengals should handle the Texans, but definitely if C.J. Stroud plays well, throws for 470 yards, I could easily see the Texans winning.
Yeah, Michael, when you were mentioning the 1 o'clock games, I got a little worried at first that you didn't mention this game as being one of the best ones, especially coming off how C.J. Stroud played last Sunday. I love the job D'Amico Ryans has done in Houston. I thought they were going to really struggle, and I think C.J. Stroud has certainly proven he is definitely the better draft choice than Bryce Young, going number 1 overall, especially watching last night's game. Bryce Young doesn't have much of a roster around him, but this Texans roster isn't necessarily loaded either.
It's not.
They've just done a great job manufacturing wins, and they're hanging around 500. I think they'll probably finish like 1 or 2 games below 500, but it feels like the Texans are a year or 2 ahead of schedule on their rebuild, which is, if you're a fan of the Texans, is what you want to see.
And Colin, that's similar to what you said about the Giants. People thought the Giants were ahead of their rebuild, and then this year, obviously, taking like 5 steps backwards. But
Well, okay, we have so many injuries that's not even funny, but I do think it's time for a total reset of the Giants, just to make myself clear.
well, outside of those 3 games, there's not many exciting games, but we'll go around the league still. The last team in the AFC North, the Steelers, we touched on them a little bit. They're playing the Packers. This is in Pittsburgh. Garrett, I know you're a Steelers fan, and you guys are 5-3. You're in the playoffs. It's interesting. It's weird. They haven't played good, but Mike Tomlin feels like he does this every single year. The team has a winning record. They win games, and they somehow are always in the conversation.
I think this game is going to be an absolute dogfight because, quite frankly, neither of these offenses are good. So I could see this game going either way. You know, I feel like a lot of people are going to take the Steelers just solely because of the record, but the Steelers aren't as good as the record shows. So I think this could definitely be a close game. I could totally see a Packers upset.
Isn't every Steeler game a close game?
That is true.
Right.
So I think I'm gonna go with the Steelers, but I think it will be a close game.
Yeah, I got the Steelers winning this one 16-10, probably hitting the under, like most of their games go.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's not much to say about the Steelers team. We sort of know what we're going to get from them. Maybe a passing touchdown from Pickett, maybe a rushing touchdown, a couple of field goals from Boswell, and key turnovers and good coaching.
What are your thoughts on George Pickens? Little drama with him coming off the field. You know, seems to be a little upset with his receiving work.
Well, if you look at how good he is and the production he has, I would be upset too.
I wouldn't. I mean, if you're winning, then who really cares?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of guys in the league who care more.
It's got to be a
about their
team.
stats
It's got to
than
be a team
money.
mentality, though.
Yeah, I mean, George Pickens has the right to be frustrated.
He's
I
a
think-
little bit of a hothead too.
Yeah, he's his temper has shown. He's gotten a couple flags for taunting and stuff.
Georgia.
But, yeah, and his time at Georgia as well. But I think he realizes that he's more than his production is showing, and he knows that if he could go to a different team, he'd probably be a lot better stats wise, and he'd get a lot more recognition. As you don't get a ton of recognition when Kenny Pickett's throwing you the ball.
Although it does seem like Kenny Pickett likes Deontay Johnson way more than George Pickens. Like I feel like he's always looking towards Deontay Johnson instead of George Pickens.
Yeah, and Deontay Johnson just came back from injury. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. He's only played like 2 games, and in those 2 games, he's targeted him a lot more.
Yeah.
And it seems to be Deontay Johnson gets a lot more targets around the line of scrimmage, whether it's slant routes or screen passes, where it feels like there's 3 or 4 targets a game for Pickens, and they're back shoulder contested throws.
Yeah.
It's always to the back shoulder with him, but he is a young player that has potential to get better and get more production. But it is kind of frustrating. I can see it from his perspective, where your offense with Matt Canada at the helm and Kenny Pickett running it. It's
Well,
just not really.
I think he went from
effective.
playing on an offense in Georgia that's so explosive and an SEC powerhouse to playing on a Steelers team who's stuck in the 80s and 90s and is trying to grind out wins. I think it's sort of just a culture change as well.
Run up the middle, incomplete punt.
Well, the Saints and the Vikings play. I think this is actually somewhat interesting too, because Josh Dobbs just got to Minnesota. He didn't even know the players' names that he was passing to last week, and he somehow found a way to win the game. Justin Jefferson just came back to practice. He's not playing in this game, but he's probably going to be back next week. So that'll be a huge boost for them, a huge boost for my fantasy team and everyone else's fantasy team throughout the league and throughout the country. But I think the Saints team, it's kind of weird. They're 5-4. Ever since Alvin Kamara came back, they've been playing a lot better. He's a big focal point in the offense. But Derek Carr, he's been really good stats-wise throughout his career. And I don't know what he can do in the NFC South. It's a division that's not very good, so he does have a chance to win it, it feels like. But at the same time, I watch the Saints, and I'm like, they're just not that good of a team.
Yeah, the weird thing about Derek Carr is I feel like he's been kind of inconsistent this year. You know, you look at his time in Las Vegas or Oakland. He was just kind of a borderline top 10 quarterback, pretty consistent. Didn't really turn the ball over. But this year, he's just kind of been a wild card. I think to the Jacksonville game, like he was horrible.
And Colin, the funny part is that his time in Oakland and Las Vegas, he had really good stats, and they wouldn't produce wins.
Yeah.
Now it's more inconsistent, but he's winning more games, and he has a better record.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. The Saints team is weird. I mean, they have a solid defense. Their offense is Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave pretty much. If you can get the ball into those two guys' hands, you'll be successful. So I don't know. The Saints team is really weird.
Yeah, the Saints is a playoff team right now, playing in the NFC South. I think they're going to win the division and earn themselves a home playoff game. So there's motivation to continue to win, definitely, in New Orleans. And then the other side, the Vikings have won 4 games in a row. I know a lot of that felt like a lot of the air was deflated because of the injury to Kirk Cousins, but Josh Dobbs did something that's really hard to do, and that's come in on 2 days of practice and win a game in the National Football League. I do think he's going to sort of come back down to earth in the weeks to come from the Vikings, but he's going to be getting Justin Jefferson back next week as well. So,
and this is sorry, Michael. This is not a bad offense by any means.
No,
I mean, they are good at just about everywhere except their offensive line. But the interesting thing about that is Josh Dobbs can get out of the pocket, and Kirk Cousins couldn't.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was just going to say that Josh Dobbs, he didn't know everybody. He didn't even know the system last week. So I think, Garrett, he's actually going to get better. I don't think he's going to get any worse. I don't think there's going to be a regression from Josh Dobbs. You've seen him in Arizona. They won a game against the Cowboys that's beyond me. But anyways, he was good there, solid there. He had a terrible team. He has a much better team in Minnesota. I think he's got a chance to actually win some games and compete for a playoff spot. So that'll be interesting, definitely, to watch him, because Justin Jefferson coming back is going to be huge.
I mean, it's already a good offense with Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison has proved that he's a wide receiver 1. So
Alexander Madison also had probably his first good week of the year last year, which is a sight to see if they can continue to run the ball, and especially Joshua Dobbs. You mentioned the quarterback run game. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week, something that Kirk Cousins didn't really mention. It's only going to give these wide receivers and running game more room.
Titans at the Buccaneers, I feel like we could just kind of skip over that. I don't know if you were watching this episode specifically looking for the Titans and Buccaneers analysis. I'm sorry. They're both 2, 3, and 5 teams, and they're not good. They're not going anywhere. Will Levis, interesting to follow.
looks pretty good.
He looks good. That's the main piece from this game.
The arm strength is just crazy. Some of the throws he can make on his back foot.
Yeah, you wonder if he gets that from the mayonnaise in his coffee, but kind of disgusting what he does in some of the. I can't even imagine drinking that. But then you have Falcons at Cardinals, another game not very interesting.
Falcons should win.
Falcons should definitely win. The Cardinals are trying to get that
Panthers.
number 1 pick. Yeah, they're competing with the Panthers. It feels like who can win.
Well, really, the Bears.
Giants are getting it.
Yeah.
Giants are getting it.
Lions-Chargers, very intriguing game, though. The Chargers worked their way back up to over 500, or still at 500 at 4-4, and the Lions 6-2. It feels like the Lions have sort of been coasting the last couple of weeks, just winning games in ugly ways, but they're 6-2 and they're winning their division. So I think this is a big game for the Chargers, though, to see if they can get themselves back in the AFC playoff picture.
Garrett, even though the Lions have been good, they're 6-2, they have a good record. It feels like this is a game that they could definitely lose, and kind of people will be like, the Lions aren't quite where we thought they were. They've proven that they're a good team this year. That they've proven that they're going to compete. They've proven that they're probably going to be in the playoffs. I don't know, unless it'd be a disaster if they're not at this point. But I don't know. This Chargers team, it is an offense that's talented still. They haven't played good this year. Justin Herbert looks like he's taking a step back, but I don't know why. But I get the feeling that this could still be a game where it's like, oh, the Lions were, like you said, they were coasting, and if they try to do that against the Chargers, I feel like they could get little bit surprised.
Actually, now that I think about it, I take back my take about the Texans being the Giants of last year. The Lions are the Giants of the last year. You know, you got a mediocre to good quarterback who's playing well, good coaching staff and good defense, and good run game. I think this Lions team is like the Giants of last year.
Gibbs has been so much better now that
Yes.
Montgomery's gone. It's
Now
kind
he's
of
gotten carries.
yeah. It's kind of it amazes me
And,
that
and I mean, he's great in the receiving game as well.
yeah, it amazes me they drafted a guy number 10 overall and then he hasn't gotten carries with David Montgomery. And I know David Montgomery's played well, but you got to give him at least some carries. He's shown that he's a guy that's super explosive, can hit a home run whenever he gets the ball. At least give him more carries, especially when Montgomery gets back. Or does he get back? I don't know. What's his injury?
I think he's coming back.
Yeah. So that's been a big piece for them too, offensively,
Yeah.
getting Gibbs involved.
It's a big game for the Lions because I feel like they haven't been tested in a couple weeks. And the next 2 weeks, they're home against Chicago and Green Bay after this game.
Yeah.
Probably going to be a couple wins, especially the one on Thanksgiving. So if the Lions can get this one and then those two, they'd be 9-2. In the NFC playoff picture, they'd be towards the top. But I think a lot of people would start to question them, even if they win those other two games and lose this week.
Well, it's time for America's game on Fox, 4:25 on Sunday. Giants against the Cowboys. It's a game that was definitely not flexed out. It should have been probably. This is not a really America's game of the week. The Cowboys are 17-point favorites at home. That's a huge line. And
Deserved.
after a 40-0 win week 1 to open the season on Sunday Night Football, Dallas is going to look to replicate that. But this is coming off a devastating loss for the Cowboys by an inch against the Eagles. It was
3
heartbreaking, and they're just going to look to bounce back these next few weeks. They don't play good teams, and they should win them all.
Yeah, we can skip over this. I think. No, I don't know if anyone's watching Tommy.
I think
Tommy
the,
DeVito.
the Giants could have a scary quick rebuild if they're able to get Caleb Williams because the Giants' defense is really good.
I'm just
They've
not-
had a lot of injuries. If they get Caleb Williams somehow, the Giants could be really good in the near future.
I'm sorry, I'm just not convinced on Caleb Williams like
How?
everyone else is because
How?
you look at USC.
His
they
statistics,
haven't played that good.
Have you looked at his stats? His stats are unreal.
I know,
I think it's.
but the
it's
interceptions concern me.
28 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's thrown 13 interceptions over his 3 years.
But the interceptions, the ones that he's thrown this year in big moments and games that is critically
His
lost them.
offensive line is horrible.
Yeah,
He has okay receivers, a terrible offensive line. The play calling hasn't been good.
For the Giants it would be good if you could get Caleb Williams because he's way better than Daniel Jones. But
He's better than Caleb Williams is way better than Drake May.
I'm not saying Drake May's better. I'm just saying I'm not fully convinced that this guy is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes yet, and that's how he's being treated.
I mean,
That if
Adam-
a team gets him, they're all of a sudden like a Super Bowl contender. That's how everyone's treating the team that gets the first overall pick.
Definitely one of the best prospects we've had in a
Let's
while.
just say if he landed in New York, the defensive difference would definitely be there. The USC is playing games in like the 40s and 50s every week, and the other team's just knowing they're going to pass the ball. And even with not great wide receivers, we've seen UFC have much better wide receivers in the past. He's still succeeding. You look at the game against Notre Dame, and you saw he struggled against pressure a little bit.
Yeah, that was a
but
really bad game.
You figure Caleb Williams is going to be fine in the NFL. I think
he
most
was.
people can
I
agree
mean,
with that.
he was doing everything himself.
But
He
you-
was
but
out of
you-
the every play. He was just
that does
he was
prove
getting
your
run out of
point.
the pocket.
Notre Dame has been a team this year that hasn't been able to generate pressure against the quarterback, and you saw them do that against USC. That's a testament to USC's bad offensive line.
And
so
their defense is literally. I thought I saw a statistic. They were like 200th in the nation. Like,
It's gonna be
absolutely.
hard to do with less than 200 FPS.
I just think that we should hold our horses saying that they're all of a sudden going to be if you get him, he's an automatic franchise quarterback. It's a guarantee he's not a bust. He's going to bring a franchise up to life, and he's going to rejuvenate whatever team he goes to. I don't think we can just be like, oh yeah, that's checked off. That's going to happen. That's keyed in. I
Caleb-
think we should calm down with Caleb Williams because he's regressed a little bit.
No,
You
he
can
has
mention
not.
that. But
No,
he has.
He has 28 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. What is wrong with that?
But he was better
He has
last year.
4 interceptions to 3 interceptions.
The
What-
rest of his team was better last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's true, but I just don't think that you could be like this guy is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes, and people are talking about him like that.
Caleb
I don't
Williams
think
in New
anyone-
York would be really scary, personally. I think the Giants
agree.
would be in for years of success if they were somehow able to get Caleb Williams, but I think it's either going to be Chicago or Arizona.
All right, we'll see. Commanders, Seahawks. The Seahawks
Should win.
should win this game. They're 5-3. They haven't played that well, to be honest. It's kind of weird watching them. They're a mediocre team, I think, but
Not that exciting to watch.
No.
Sam Howell's been good this year, though, for the Commanders.
he's been good and bad. It's been I feel like a
He's a
mixed
rookie.
bag, but well, technically a rookie, like his first year starting. But
Ben Simmons.
this is a Sunday Night Football game that's really awful. The Jets and the Raiders, they thought this would be like an Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams matchup, I guess, in the beginning of the season when they were making the schedule. But this is not the case.
The Raiders team has come to
It's
life
gonna
a
be
little
interesting.
bit.
It's gonna be interesting. Ever since Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I think they're
got
glad. If you saw the locker room where they were smoking cigars, Max Crosby pretty thrilled that Josh McDaniels no longer the coach there.
But the Jets, they need to stay afloat. That's the moral of the story. They're gonna probably get Aaron Rodgers back at the end of the season. They're 4-4 right now.
I think it'll be too late for them to make for it to make a difference.
Their defense is so good. It's
No, I
it's
know.
such a shame. It's
They're-
really
okay,
a shame.
Okay, here's the issue. Aaron Rodgers, especially coming off a torn Achilles in the same year that he tore it, is not going to be able to escape that putrid offensive line.
He'll be better than Zach Wilson. I'll guarantee that.
I mean, their offensive line is horrible.
I will say
Zach Wilson is
watching-
an incompetent quarterback.
Watching Rodgers the last couple of years, he's struggling to move out of the pocket.
Right.
His mobility is really limited, and I know Zach Wilson's not good, but the Jets' offensive line it's really.
Did you
bad.
watch it in that Chargers game?
Again,
It was
it was
horrible.
yeah, it was so
It was
bad.
Horrible.
It was really bad. And I think you're gonna get the same exact thing against the Raiders.
So that's why I don't think he'll make much of a difference. Unless he can get the ball out in 2 seconds to Garrett Wilson, who's their
I mean,
only,
you know he can.
who's one of their only threats.
They tried to trade for Davante Adams, but the Raiders were not picking up.
To
the
try to
phone.
trade for offensive linemen. That's that's their main issue. If he had an offensive line that was like the Philadelphia Eagles, the Lions, or something like that,
I mean, most teams would get a lot better if they had the Eagles' offensive line.
yeah, it would be very interesting to see because he'd have so much time to throw. You saw in his glory days in Green Bay when they had a good offensive line behind in
Bakhtiari.
front
You
of
saw
him. Yeah.
the Robert Saleh press conference too. They asked him why they're not starting Trevor Siemian over Zach Wilson. He just said, "I plead the fifth."
That
He
was
was on
That's
answer the
horrible.
question.
That's terrible. Like he's not the
That
decision.
was on
maker.
the Michael K show.
That's horrible.
They were asking him about.
How
So
can
you
you-
have Trevor Simeon, right? Like, are you gonna pull up this Michael K? Is pressing him, and he's like, Zach.
How do you why would
He
you-
goes,
how
I'm
would-
gonna have to plead the fifth on that one. I can't really answer that.
That's a
So
terrible
the question
response.
is Joe Douglas really pressuring Robert Saleh to keep Zach in? Who is trying to keep Zach in? That's my main question because it's a real interesting dynamic when you listen to Saleh. It sounds like he wants to say something. It sounds like he can't. What's going on?
Why would he say that? That is the worst response you could have. Because
No, I feel bad for him. I really do because he has a terrible quarterback in Zach Wilson, and he doesn't want to say
you always
someone's-
back up your players. No matter what, you always back up your players.
Yeah, but okay. Well, backing up his player would be saying if we're starting Trevor Simeon, he's backing up Trevor Simeon. It's like the team doesn't like Zach. Remember last year?
By pleading the fifth, it's almost like he's bashing Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it is.
But it's deserved. It's
You don't bash your own players.
But he didn't. But I don't count. I really don't think it's bashing. It would have been bashing if he went. Yeah, we need to get Trevor. We need to get. We need to get Trevor up
passive
here."
aggressively bashing Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it's.
But he deserves it. He's been terrible. He's been
I
awful.
think what the response
He,
needs to be is
he,
just.
all he has to say is, we play the player that we think is going to give us the best chance to win.
and he has said that all year and
Just
all
say
Just
we're-
keep saying it.
Just say we're continuing to evaluate them in practice, and they're going back and
That's
forth.
all you have to say. You don't say I
yeah.
plead the fifth.
Yeah, it wasn't a good
You plead the
response,
fifth
but
by saying we evaluate every.
Yeah, no,
Sunday.
it wasn't.
Robert-
I'm not defending his response, but I'm just saying I can see 100% where he's coming
If you
from.
want
This
to
is an awful
if you
quarterback.
want to lose a locker room that's probably not very high right now, that is the exact way to do it.
I don't think so. I think the locker room hates Zach Wilson. I think they want him to say, no, get Zach out of there, bring someone else in, anybody else, because this guy sucks.
You think Trevor Simeon is going to be?
No,
that,
I don't.
You think
I
he's gonna
don't.
be
That's
that
their
much
issue.
better
No,
than Zach Wilson?
Maybe it's a chance. I don't know.
even just watching Robert Saleh's body language.
Should
on
try
the
to get Josh
sideline,
Dobbs.
He does not like Zach Wilson. Yeah, Josh Dobbs would have.
It's not a good offense.
They really should have tried. Well, they have
And-
Brees Hall. They have
and they
Garrett
have a
Wilson. They have
defensive
they
coach.
do have. It's and Nathaniel Hackett. We were told that he was going to bring all this back. I know he's planning to be with Aaron Rodgers, but it hasn't been anything special for this Jets offense the whole season. And then Broncos Bills, a Monday night game, another bad primetime game.
Primetime games this week are not good.
Really
Actually,
bad.
I think this game is going to be a good reset for the Bills. Good opportunity to get their offense going.
I agree.
Josh Allen back to his MVP form.
You need to get back in the playoff picture.
Well, yeah, that too. But definitely a good reset. Get this offense going against a bad Broncos team.
That's about
The
it.
Broncos can manage wins against mediocre teams at home. They're not going to go on the road and win a game at Buffalo on Monday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is November, start of college basketball season. It started. We'll have more episodes on college basketball coming up. We know we're definitely watching the Maui tournament that's in Hawaii. That's going to be super exciting. A lot of good teams in that field, including Syracuse. But we'll have more to come with that later on. It's a good episode. It's a kind of a boring week in the NFL, but there are a few games out there that are pretty intriguing and interesting.
Yeah, we're sort of hitting that midway stretch in the NFL where we're not quite to the Thanksgiving, Christmas playoff picture.
We've kind of established
Yeah, but
who's who, though.
we know the team's identities by now, though.
Well, thanks for listening to this edition of the CR Sports Podcast, and stay tuned. Thank you, everybody.